Welcome back to Windows on the World. This is part two, our first part to the show, explained exactly and in great detail everything you need to know about the Brexit betrayal and all the misdirection that has been used against the public. So, in this part of the show, I'm going to get the opinion of one of our speakers, Sandy Adams. We may hear from Mr. Corbyn a bit later in the show, but he's en route somewhere at the moment. So, as this is a follow-up, please listen to that first episode, Brexit Betrayal Explained. It will absolutely amaze you how we've been hoodwinked and the actual simplicity of leaving the European Union is explained in there. And yes, it's all legal and it's all within the World Trade Organization framework. And we had a guest in the first half, Tim Sanders, who originally spoke at the Occupy movement. And we also talked in the first part of the show about the controlled opposition groups which take over everything in this country. And they run all of their meetings in exactly the same way as your local council. You don't believe me? Well, listen to that first part of the show. But I'm going to get Sandy's opinion on that show now, because Sandy's one of our speakers in The Bigger Picture, which we take around the country. And indeed, it is the bigger picture because it accurately describes everything that's going on, why it's happening and who's doing it. So, Sandy, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Mark. It was a really good first half of the show, actually, and Tim put it really well about the WTO rules, particularly Article 24. It's been a nonsense this last 2 years really, of a concerted effort by Theresa May to not execute the will of the people. And I was just looking at some polls today. I know you have to be careful with polls, but basically, according to Sky and new government polls, most of the country wants to leave, with no deal. And that's simply because, they can't see that, what's on offer is not a deal. It's a bad deal, and no deal is better than a bad deal. So, we could very easily leave under no deal this coming Friday by the means of the World Trade Organization rules, which would provide us with at least, a 2-year transition, with the EU, and it would prevent this. What they're fear-mongering about this crash out. It wouldn't be a crash out. It would be a smooth operation to go through the WTO, rules.
We outlined that, in the first part of the show, and it's really obvious, and the legal framework was clearly there. What this means is that what the government should have been doing in 2017, they haven't done at all, because if they had done it, then everything would be in place. And this WTO agreement can actually extend from 2 years to 10 years. And basically, you can, in a way, cut and paste the tariffs that are already in place and get member countries to look through them. And basically, the only difference, in fact, would be that there would not be any particular advantages to EU-UK trading. They would have to trade with us like any country outside the EU.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm finding really difficult is the fact that Theresa May is still there. This woman has betrayed the people. She's betrayed her own party. She's collaborated with the opposition, and she's still in power. What is going on? It's absolutely ludicrous. And as much as I'd like to think that, I did think that maybe Jeremy Corbyn would actually come up with something. Unfortunately, his deal is no better than her deal. It's the same thing, except we don't have a backstop. So it means remaining in the single market, remaining in the customs union, remaining under EU laws relating to health, the environment and the workplace, remaining open to free movement of labour, and worst of all, a second referendum. So we don't have any choice, really. They sort of come up with the same deal, which is no deal at all. It's about pushing this. Nobody's talking about WTO. Nobody except Farage. Actually, he talked about it on I think it was LBC the other night. And why hasn't this been? Why was it all a big secret? Why was it a big secret? Why didn't we know about it? Because it is the solution.
Yes, well, it wasn't a secret. It was kind of knowledge that was available, but not put in front of the public in any useful way. I mean, these things get talked about and the public don't understand them, but we've read the legal arguments and the legal definitions that are in there, and they all exist. They always have existed. So, in other words, the country, the majority of the voters in the country, rather, have been completely betrayed by the government. Now, this is an interesting point because it means that those people will now realise that their vote meant nothing.
Absolutely. And so really, at the moment, it's not about Conservative or Labour. It's about Leave or Remain, and it's about whether you want some form of democracy or tyranny. And it boils down to that at the end of the day, because we're in that situation where you've got people on both sides, both Labour and Conservative, wanting to get out and wanting no deal.
Well, the Remain side are particularly uninformed, and their arguments revolve around basically trivia, which has nothing to do with the issue. The issue is all about trade and agreement and tariffs. That's really what it comes down to. It's not about a big happy clappy European state, which is actually it's the opposite of what they think. So this actual federal continent that they're trying to impose on each country, in other words, the loss of sovereignty of everything and loss of culture to become a monoculture, is kind of it's the opposite thing to what they think is happening. So in other words, a lot of the people who are talking about Remain are actually opposed to the main principles of what their own argument is. It's kind of incredible that they don't know what the European Union is actually about. That they think it's some kind of big happy clappy place where no one needs a visa and we're all part of some big family. Well, that's not really what it's about at all. It never was about that. It never is going to be about that. And as the EU take more and more control, which is what it's about, there's going to be less rights, less travel. This is the whole point about it. Under this UN Agenda 21 and what's being imposed on every country, not just the EU, travelling is going to be stamped down on. So in other words, there's not going to be as much opportunity to travel anyway. The EU are going to make sure of all this. This is all part of the global action plan. It's part of the bigger picture, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, I was just looking at all the stuff today. There seems to be this big power play going on between Merkel and Macron, because Macron's going to say no to Theresa May's plea for the extension of Article 50 until the 30th of June, which could actually benefit us, because he actually, there seems to be this power play. He's got Spain and Belgium on his side to veto her request, on Wednesday, which would be really interesting to see how it plays out, because, Macron, he doesn't really care about the sovereignty of countries, quite the reverse. He wants us to, what he doesn't want is populist MPs, going into the European Parliament to mess up his plan, because he wants power to be really to be reigning from Paris. And then you've got Merkel, who obviously wants us to remain and wants us to stay, and she's got her power base in Berlin and Frankfurt, and that's Theresa May is playing ball with her, and Macron is angry because he actually, there seems to be this power play going on between Merkel and him. So, in fact, he could be our saviour in some sort of way, because, he's going to say no, you can't extend it, which would work very well for us. And I did wonder, because, the Gilets Jaunes are kind of disrupting, kind of having a go at Macron all the time. It could be that they're controlled opposition to Merkel. I mean, I did start, throwing things around in my head today about that, because they are so well organised. Who knows what the Gilets Jaunes do? Maybe they started out as grassroots and they've been infiltrated as well.
Oh, they've been terribly infiltrated, but I think that because it was such a mass movement that the infiltrators were outnumbered. But I think with them it's more to do with the draconian efforts that the government are putting in against them. People being shot in the face, losing eyes, getting injured, and all the rest of it. And then there's talk of them being sprayed with some kind of smart dust. I don't know whether that's true or not, but it wouldn't surprise me, because this is what the EU's all about, though. The EU is all about iron fist tyranny. That's the whole point of it.
Absolutely.
And this is what these Remainers people, they just don't get this at all. And they're living in some fluffy bunny kind of utopia, which just is not real. And the other thing is that the grasp of geopolitics actually on both sides is really, really limited, and that's to do with the UK media.
Yeah. The trouble is the UK media are really, they're just not putting out anything that other than the narrative that they want put out, which is that it would be terrible if we crashed out, and that we've got to set these deals, and it's just nonsense. And it's just, I just don't know what's going to happen unless we'll just see what happens on Wednesday with Macron. Maybe he'll just say no more, and with the Spanish and the Belgians on his side, he might get that one through. I don't know. But, Rees-Mogg is kind of, threatened him, and it was a veiled threat, because he tweeted, he said, if a long extension leaves us stuck in the EU, we should be as difficult as possible. We could veto any increase in the budget, obstruct the fugitive EU army, and block Mr. Macron's integrational schemes, which, it's really him saying we're going to make it really difficult if you don't bend to our what we want.
Well, but the question is, who's we? I mean, the government in this country aren't acting for the public, because the public voted and they are not acting accordingly. So people like Rees-Mogg can stand in the background and they can shout and holler, or they can, he doesn't really shout and holler, does he? But he does it in this kind of very smooth, sardonic way, but that's not going to change anything either. So unless people actually get to grips with what the reality is and what has been done and the issues are addressed, then all of this stuff is just hot air.
Well, it's interesting watching how the politicians have flip-flopped, in the last 2 weeks. Rees-Mogg a few weeks ago was going to accept, was supporting Theresa May's deal, and now he's flip-flopped back again. And they're all flip-flopping. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn's flip-flopped. They've all flip-flopped. And so there's something controlling the narrative in the background, obviously. And it's the main push is for us to accept this deal, which isn't a deal, which would end up, it's like a Hotel California situation where you can check out but you can never leave. And that's where we are right now, unless we literally do the whole WTO and get out, and I think that's what we should do.
Yeah, someone's just put into chat, does return to sender work on parking tickets? And I've just put, no, it doesn't. Never do that. Because by not opening something, you're agreeing to it, even if you send it back. And you will get Marstons knocking on your door or clamping your car if you do that. There are remedies to parking tickets, but they're not generally the ones that the gurus tell you work. I've been through this many times. I've had many vehicles clamped, and I've had a lot of fun with these cat and mouse games, which you can do for a short period of time, but then become rather inconvenient, because having your vehicle clamped when you're trying to get somewhere else is a bit of a problem, even if you've got 36-inch bolt cutters. Once they start using this molybdenum on their chains, then it takes a little bit of almost superhuman strength, which we managed to muster the last time this happened, but it is a bit inconvenient. So don't send parking tickets back with return to sender. Not a good idea. That's a little trivial issue, but it's actually one of the issues that we started out. I mean, it's interesting actually, because years ago, you start with parking tickets, then you take on the local council, then you find out the fraud continues into the county court with people getting their houses stolen. Now I'm into criminal and I'm going into the High Court. So I suppose you could say I'm working my way up. The problem is that I haven't got a law degree, so I'm never going to make any money out of this. But it's an interesting ride, as they say. We will be covering more of this in the weeks to come, actually. All of this stuff to do with debt and debt collectors, because it really is the stuff that we cut our teeth on. And of course, it's massively important to people, but it's quite easy to get rid of debt collectors. Parking tickets are a bit more difficult. Parking tickets on private land, go to bovat.org.uk, run by my friends, boevat.org.uk, and that teaches you all you need to know about parking tickets on private land. So that's very useful for anybody who's outstayed their welcome of some private company in a supermarket where they've been spending their money.
So it's easier. You're saying it's easier to get out of those private fines.
Oh yes, those are easy because you use case law, Dunlop versus New Garage, and it's all about companies cannot issue prioris, which are liquidated damages. In a civil contract, you have to prove loss in a civil contract, and they can't prove loss. They can't prove that they've lost money by you parking in that space, because the space was free, and it is free monetary-wise. You're not paying to be there. So you can't impose a fine on something which is not contractual. And only a court, only a court can issue a fine. We've had this out with quite a lot of these organisations, and in fact I've done this stuff with the local councils and won, but it's not something to do half-heartedly. I've had frantic people phoning me up at 11 o'clock at night saying, my car's been clamped, and I said, well, I told you it'd be clamped if you left it on a main road and you didn't pay the parking ticket. And I managed to get one off, actually. It was a company called White & Co, and they're a small bailiff company, but one phone call to them got the clamp removed. There are many ways to deal with this, but you have to know what you're doing. And that's what I've always said. I suppose it's a bit like the Brexit thing. I mean, you're only as good as the knowledge you've got. If you don't know the World Trade Organization agreement and the GATT rules, then you're actually firing in the dark, aren't you? You don't know what you're doing. So all this stuff in the newspapers and all this deception, I suppose it ties into all that stuff, can't pay, take it away, all these stupid programs. Well, the point is, what they never tell you is how to deal with the matter. They just instill the fear, don't they? So that's the whole point. Yeah, it's
Project Fear the whole time. And also, people are so busy nowadays. They're so busy working, trying to pay their bills, trying to pay their mortgages. They don't have time to do the research. And so it's easier to just listen to Radio 4 or pick up a newspaper and read the narrative and believe what's going on. It's so difficult. If you actually really do want to find the truth, it takes time, and you've got to turn the television off, and you've got to really research and find out what is really going on.
Yes,
and very few people have, just cannot do that at the moment, because, well, it's not in their, capacity to be able to do that. And I think people are slowly waking up, but it's not enough,
Yes, exactly. And this is the thing about misinformation. I mean, people are putting stuff into chat tonight which isn't accurate. The council are just the same. You have no contract. That's not true at all, because under the poor laws, you have a liability to the council. Council has liability to you. There's an article we did called Are You a Pauper? That's very important. But once you know what the liabilities are, then you can actually do something about it. It's like people saying council tax is unlawful. No, it isn't. It comes from the poor laws. It comes from you being property and all the rest of it. And once you know this stuff, then you can do something about it. I've been to bankruptcy with council tax. I know lots of people who have. And basically, it's totally different than a lot of what these misinformation gurus say. And that's where people get into trouble, and they lose their houses, and they end up getting their cars taken away and all the rest of it. And what you can actually do is research where it all comes from, which is actually where the interesting bit is, really, because aside from the financial issues, which have saved thousands of pounds with, getting out of parking tickets and turning over parking tickets, and actually even helping other people who were put up and named and shamed by the council. I've had their websites removed. Council spy program backfires. That was NSL basically photographing the public, putting them up there because they dropped a cigarette end, and because they hadn't given their name, they were saying they're wanted. Well, the council can't do that. They're not indemnified to do that. And I think we have someone trying to get through, but they're not going to be able to because we're busy. So I can't really get rid of that. It's quite irritating. It doesn't seem to want to go. So I'm trying to get rid of that call. I'll have to wait till they've gone. So if that person's listening, which I very much doubt they are, or they wouldn't have phoned me now, then I hope they go away soon. Are you still there, Sandy?
Yeah, I'm still here.
That's okay, they've gone now. So yes, it's one of the disadvantages of doing this on the hoof is that you have to use a normal phone. I haven't got actually a studio with incoming phone calls and that sort of thing. LBC, this is not, but I think that's quite a good thing actually. So this fella's, there's people talking about the going on about councils and contracts again. So, I mean, we covered all this years ago. I mean, this about 15 years ago we started doing this, going into courts, getting all excited and saying I'm not the legal fiction and all the rest of it. And at the end of the day, you have to understand how the system works, otherwise you will never win. And this is the interesting thing. And we made a video years ago called Councils, Courts and Conmen. You can still see it on there. I'm more proud of our Occupy videos actually, because they pointed out exactly what's going on at the moment and the way things are, and this the extension of Extinction Rebellion. Now, what did you think about that section of the show, Sandy?
That was amazing. I mean, the stuff with Gail Bradbrook, because, and also the fact that the same people all those years ago at Occupy are now disrupting, the fracking camp, and the fact that you've got people, they are change agents. The whole dragon thing, Dragon Tea or Tea, whatever it was, and
Dragon Tango, Dragon Echo.
Yes, that's it. Dragon.
But that doesn't sound like the police, does it?
I mean, it's madness, isn't it? And the fact that also that they're all being, they're all working out how much money they can make out of it. They're all getting, salaries, aren't they? People like Gail Bradbrook.
Well, yes, but they actually lay out what they want out of it. She said, "Well, I've paid." No, she says in that document that you can look at on Extinction Rebellion fake protest. Have a look at that, because the documents are actually in that article on Windows on the World.
Yeah.
They're internal documents where they were asking how much they wanted. How much they were going to be taking out of the money that the public had given to them, basically. They lay it out, and Gail Bradbrook actually says that she's paid for her mortgage and she doesn't need any money anymore. Basically, this is what she wants for doing it. I mean, these people have been funded from the very start. This is very irritating. I'm getting these people calling me, which I don't want to actually answer at the moment, so we'll have to persevere until they go away. They've gone away now, that's good. Yes, so basically, what else struck you about that show? Because we put out quite a bit of stuff on Extinction Rebellion and from Occupy, because Tim Sanders was actually speaking at Occupy and knows a lot about how that was taken down. And it's interesting that we've all met up and basically got in touch now. So, what was your thoughts on that?
Sorry. Can you just repeat what you just said? Yeah.
Oh, I managed to get rid of it. Yeah.
Good. Okay. No, it was great. I mean, the same names keep cropping up, don't they?
Yeah.
In these infiltrators, and they are operating as a it's almost like counterintelligence. They just want to disrupt the grassroots or people who actually are proper protesters, and they're very clever the way they're doing it, because they've successfully broken up some of the fracking camps, which is, really sad because they've the real people that set it up have worked very hard, and they just come in and destroy it by infiltrating. And just noticing it with Extinction Rebellion is so obviously, if only they would look at themselves, because it's piggybacking on this whole thing. We've got to do something, and so people feel impotent because everything's going wrong. They in their eyes, actually everything is going the way that it's meant to go for whatever reason. But I think there is an awakening of people, but they're awakening to what they think is a good cause, and it's not. It's the opposite, because they're actually fueling the very agenda which is going to destroy. The whole climate gate thing is part of the Agenda 21, narrative. They're just fueling it, and they don't realise.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, the point is that the Extinction Rebellion is part of the Global Action Plan. It is part of taking away your rights. It is basically a load of corporates rinsing the public and actually enslaving them as well under these global action plans. That's what it's all about. And the whole thing of the climate change agenda, we address in our talks the bigger picture and where it came from and what it's all about. Someone's very persistent in trying to get through here, but never mind. If it's somebody I know, they should know that I usually broadcast at this time of night and I'm on the phone to you. And if it's somebody I don't know, it says private number. I don't want to speak to them anyway. However, so we better wrap this up actually, because we sort of get inundated by calls here, but it's a kind of follow up from the last show we did, which you can find on our Spreaker platform, and do please subscribe to us on Spreaker, because that's where we need people to be, because we are having stuff taken off YouTube pretty much every few weeks now. Our back catalogue is disappearing from YouTube, and I was thinking of uploading it maybe to Spreaker, so that we have it there for the future. But we're also on BitChute, so please do actually look on there as well. So I think we can wrap that up now. I don't think we're going to get to speak to Mr. Corbyn. We'll speak to Mr. Corbyn probably during the week, but I will be back next week 9 p.m. Please do go to windowsontheworld.net, book the bigger picture, and I'm looking forward to finding out who this is on the phone so I can tell them to get lost. Okay then, thanks very much everybody, and thanks Sandy. We'll speak to you soon.
Speak soon. Take care. Bye.
Join me, Mark Windows, for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT. Check out our archive and program stream at windowsontheworld.net.